Hello everyone, I'm so excited to meet you again with another interesting and useful video. In this video, we're going to learn everything we need to know about velocity. Velocity is an important metrics in Agile project management. We use velocity to compute the project schedule, we use it to prepare the release plan, and we use velocity to track the team performance, and we use it as a diagnostic tool. So in this video, we will learn everything we need to know about velocity. So let's get started. Let's start with the definition of velocity. Velocity is all about the amount of work an Agile team can complete per iteration or sprint. Iteration and sprint are same, we know this. If someone asks you, hey buddy, how much work your team can complete per iteration or per sprint, your answer should be based on your team velocity. So velocity is the rate at which your team can complete the available work. It's same as speed, all right? For example, you are traveling at 100 miles per hour and you need to cover a distance of 500 miles. If someone asks you, what is your velocity? Well, 100 miles per hour. And with this, they can understand, okay, to cover the entire distance of 500 miles, you're going to take 5 hours of time. The same applies to project management. We take the total amount of work we have in the product backlog and we use the team velocity to find out how many iterations or how much time period we need to complete all the work we have in the product backlog. So velocity is the basic input we need to calculate the project schedule in Agile projects where we use iterative scheduling. We have some other project management methods like Kanban. Kanban is an Agile methodology, but it doesn't use velocity. We use something called throughputs. I will cover this concept, throughput and on-demand scheduling. That is the scheduling technique we use in Kanban methodology in another video. But in this video, we will focus only on velocity. So, as I already mentioned, in other words, the rate at which or the speed at which the work can be completed by your team members. And we use story points to represent velocity. So for example, someone asks you how much is your team velocity, we say 30 story points or 20 story points. All right. I have covered what is meant by story points and planning poker exercise in detail in another video, and I've provided the link of that video in the description, so please check it out if you want to learn more about story points and planning poker exercise. Okay, now we will understand how to calculate the team velocity. Velocity shall be calculated for every sprint or iteration after we complete the sprint, and this will happen after we finish the product demo meeting, otherwise called as the sprint review or iteration review meeting. So here you have the overall Agile framework, to be specific, Scrum framework. Most of the Agile methodologies will be similar to Scrum. For example, if we take extreme programming, it will be very similar to Scrum. So let's use Scrum for our discussion to understand how to calculate velocity. So we have to start with the product backlog. So the product backlog will have all the items or work we need to accomplish. So primarily we'll be having all the functionalities and features to be done in the product in form of user stories. Here you could see a product backlog. There's a lot of items in this product backlog. So you could find user story 1, 2, and so many. In total we have 4 to 6 user stories, and we used story points to size them. Story points are non-standard units. We use them to size the user stories using relative sizing. And how we do this? We do something called planning poker. It's an estimation technique we use in Agile project management to estimate the sizes of the features by comparing one feature with another feature. So I've covered how to do planning poker exercise in detail in another video, and I've provided the link of this video in the description. Please watch this video to learn more about how to do relative sizing, and how to apply planning poker exercise, and what are story points. So we have all the items in the product backlog, and we also have their sizes here. Okay, so in total we have 46 items, and these are the sizes of each item. For example, user story 1 is of 8 story points, user story 3 is of 13 story points, and so on. Okay, so we have already defined the product backlog and also estimated the sizes of the user stories inside the product backlog using story points. Now it's time to calculate the velocity. So here we have the product backlog, and I have captured a snippet of what we saw in the drawing board here. So inside this product backlog, you will find so many user stories, and we have the sizes of the user stories. Okay. Now here we have the Agile framework or Scrum framework. If you start a project, if you do a project using Agile methodology, to be specific Scrum or Extreme Programming, we run something called iterations. An iteration is a time box of 2 to 4 weeks duration. We have to choose which is our preferred iteration size. Let's say we are going with 2 weeks. Typically you can choose any number between 4 weeks to 1 week duration. It's up to us. But most of the projects prefer 2 weeks duration. And every iteration will begin with an iteration planning. So this will happen on day 1 of the sprint for, let's say, 2 to 3 hours of time. And here the product owner will issue what are the features or the user stories the team need to implement in this iteration. So let's say the product owner is assigning these first 3 user stories to the team members as the sprint or iteration goal. Now the team members will do the iteration planning and come up with the iteration or sprint backlog, and then they will begin the sprint. So if you take 2 weeks sprints, technically we have 10 working days because we don't work on Saturdays and Sundays, and so the team members, and therefore we have 10 working days. The team members already spent 2 to 3 hours of time to come up with the iteration or the sprint backlog. So planning is done. So they do the execution, and they will spend the remaining 9.5 days to complete the planned work. So they will do all the required activities like designing, coding, testing. Assume that these 3 features are software features: code review, testing. So all things will be performed, and towards the end of the sprint, on the 10th day of the sprint, the team members will come up with the increments. So increments are potential shippable features or user stories. So let's say these 3 features are done, the user stories are done. Once the items are done, the team members will demonstrate the completed work to the stakeholders: the PO, the product owner, the Scrum Master, the stakeholders like the sponsor, the end users, and so on. And this meeting is called as the iteration or sprint demo meeting, also called as iteration review or product demo. There are so many names we used to call this meeting, and this will happen on the last day of the sprint. So the team members will demonstrate the work to the end users, the sponsor, the customer, the product owner, and seek their approval, acceptance. The product owner should give the final acceptance to declare these items are good and can be shipped to the customer or the end users. If they get feedback, like let's say the team members are receiving feedback from the stakeholders that the items are not up to the mark, need to be modified or improved or enhanced, then they will go back to the product backlog. Now whatever items accepted in the product demo meeting will be considered for calculating the team velocity. Alright. So let's say These 3 items are done by the team members and they are presented during the product demo meeting, and the PO and other stakeholders are fine with the work and they have provided their formal acceptance. Now you can treat that the team has done with all the 3 features. Okay. So user story 1, 2 and 3 are accepted in the iteration review. Now we're going to use the story points of these 3 user stories, that is 8 plus 5 plus 13, to calculate the iterations velocity. So to calculate the iteration velocity, we know that these 3 items are done, and we go and check in the product backlog what are the sizes of these 3 user stories. It's 8, 5 and 13. So we bring 8, 5 and 13, we add them up, 8 plus 5 plus 13, and we found it's in total 26 story points. And 26 story points is this current iterations velocity. I hope you are clear how to calculate velocity. We should consider only the items which are accepted in the product demo meeting, or otherwise called as iteration review meeting, to calculate the iterations velocity. So in this case, all the 3 user stories are accepted by the PO in the product demo meeting, and so we are adding up the story points of these 3 features and we found the iteration velocity. So we do this by end of every iteration. Always remember, we must not consider incomplete work or not accepted work packages or user stories to calculate the iteration velocity. Let's say in this case, user story 1 and 2 got accepted and 3 got rejected. Now you cannot treat or consider user story 3 for velocity calculation. Clear? That's about how we calculate the team velocity. Hope you are clear with how to calculate team velocity. We do this by end of every iteration. Now let's talk about how to calculate the average velocity of the team. Well, we use velocity to do the planning, and so we should be very cautious with this number. Just because your team accomplished 30 story points in an iteration, it doesn't mean that they will do it in every iteration. So we have to consider or factor in the uncertainties we have in the project, and therefore we need to measure or calculate the velocity of 6 consecutive iterations or sprints and do a simple average to find out the average velocity of the team. So here you could see a bar chart. So in first iteration, the team members have accomplished 23 story point, and in second iteration they have achieved 27 story point. In third iteration they have achieved 29, and in fourth iteration 24, and then 22, and then 26. Okay, in the last iteration. Now you could see that it's kind of varying, and this is very normal because there are so many factors influence the velocity of the team, like team members availability, complexity of the work, requirement uncertainty level, and so on. So here we have the table. So what we do, we add up these numbers, 23 plus 27 plus 29 plus 24 plus 22 plus 26, and divide the total value by 6 because we have 6 values in the numerator. So when you do that, we get 25 here. So 25 is the average team velocity. So keep this in mind. If you are preparing the schedule, I have made another video on how to prepare the release plan, how to do iterative scheduling. I have provided the link in the description, so please check it out. And to make the schedule, an iterative schedule or release planning, to find out how many iterations we would need, we take the total amount of work we have in the product backlog and divide that by velocity. Now, if you are just using a velocity of a particular iteration, that may not be reliable. So we have to ensure we run minimum 6 iterations. 6 is the standard. So we have to run minimum 6 iterations and do a simple average to find out the average velocity of the team. I hope you are clear how to find the average velocity of the team. Now, to get each iteration's velocity, we need to run an iteration. We know this. And let's say you're going with 2 weeks iteration. This means to complete 6 iterations, you would need round about 12 weeks. Do you agree? So let's say you're running iterations of 2 weeks duration, and the first iteration's velocity is 23. The second iteration velocity is 27. Third is 29. Fourth is 24. Fifth is 22. Sixth is 26, and so on. Well, each iteration is going to take 2 weeks duration. Now, if you add up these numbers, the durations, so it's 6 times of 2 weeks. That will be 12 weeks duration, isn't it? So can you run a project without scheduling? Because if you want to prepare the schedule and find out when each item will be delivered, how many iterations you need in total to complete this project, and to prepare the release plan, we must need the velocity. However, to find the team's average velocity, it's clear that we need to run 6 iterations, isn't it? So that's going to take 12 weeks of time. That's around about 3 months duration. So can you do a project without having a schedule for the first 3 weeks or 3 months duration? Definitely no. So until we find out the actual velocity of the team, this is all about the average velocity of the team, we have to go for initial or assumed velocity. So how we find out initial or assumed velocity? Before starting the first iteration, we need to check with the team members. Hey guys, we just finished with the first time product backlog grooming exercise, and we are done with the planning poker exercise. Now you guys have a fair understanding of what are the work we have in the product backlog, their complexity, and so on. So based on your assessment, we are asking the team members, okay, based on their assessment, we want them to come up with a number, how much velocity with which they can operate in the first few iterations. And this velocity is called initial or assumed velocity. We ask the team members, based on your assessment, knowing what kind of work we have in the product backlog, roughly how much work, how many story point amount of work you guys can complete per iteration. And that will be the initial or assumed velocity of the team for the first 6 iterations. Once we are done with the first 6 iterations, you will do simple average of the velocity of the last 6 iterations to find out the team's actual velocity. But till then, we prepare a plan, a schedule, a release plan based on the initial velocity provided by the team members. Alright, so that's about initial or assumed velocity. Now once we are done with 6 iterations and once we know the actual velocity of the team, we have to redo the calculations for the schedule for the remaining work we have in the product backlog based on the newly found velocity, average velocity of the team. Okay, so that's about velocity. Okay, in this slide we will learn few important points about velocity. First thing is, velocity is a lagging metrics and not a leading metrics. So when we say leading metrics, we are talking about something we forecast. For example, estimated durations or leading metrics. We assume this is how it's going to be, and then we do the work and compare. Whereas when it comes to lagging metrics, we have to do the work, perform the work to find the numbers. And so velocity is a lagging metrics. We need to first perform the work to find out the team's velocity. The second point is, the velocity of one team should not be compared with the velocity of other teams, because velocities are calculated based on story points, and story points are non-standard units. If you say years, miles, kilometers, dollar value, these are global. These are standard units. Whereas story points are not standard units. When we do relative sizing, we pick the smallest feature or user story in the product backlog, and we size the remaining features relative to that smallest feature. So I have already mentioned, I covered what is meant by relative sizing, story points, and how to play planning poker, everything in a video. I have provided the link in the description, so please check it out. So why we should not compare velocity of one team with another team? Because we use story points. Story points are non-standard units. The smallest feature in your product backlog may be bigger than the smallest feature in another product backlog of another team. So you should not compare the velocity of your team with the other team's velocity. So don't do this. Third thing is, velocity is one of the primary input for scheduling, for doing release planning. Well, I have made another video on release planning. You can see the link of this video in the description. We take the total amount of work in the product backlog in terms of story points, and we divide that with the velocity to calculate the number of iterations we would need to complete the items in the product backlog. Let's say in total you have 300 story points amount of work in your product backlog, and your team's velocity is 30 story points. Then it's very clear that we need 10 iterations to complete the project. And if you have each iteration of 2 weeks duration, then we are talking about 20 calendar weeks. So please check the video in the description to learn more about how to do iterative scheduling and release planning. So without velocity, we cannot prepare the iterative schedule or the release plan. So keep this in mind. Fourth point is, velocity is a diagnostic tool. And after recording the velocity of each iteration, you can check how things are going. You can do a trend analysis, whether the velocities are improving or deteriorating and so on. And this will help us to evaluate the team performance. And also remember, we should never evaluate or measure the velocity of individual team members, because this will affect the team morale, affect the team spirit. So always measure velocity for the whole team, not for the individuals. Last point is, velocity indicates team capacity. Before the team gets the iteration goals assigned, the product owner will check how many features we can assign to the team members. In the previous case, in the example, we consider the product owner is assigning the first 3 user stories, right? User story 1, 2, and 3. Now, let's say your team velocity is 25. Let's go back to this slide. Let's say your team velocity is 25. Now, the product owner will check how many features we can assign as the iteration goal for the team members. Let's say the product owner is going with his first 3 features. How it is understood? How it is understood that the team members can do 3 features. If you take user story 1, it's of 8 story point. User story 2 is of 5 story point. So 8 plus 2, 8 plus 5, we got 13 and another 13. So in total 26 story points. So the team velocity is 25 story points. Now if you add up these 3 features, we get 26. So this is sufficient. If you go beyond this, let's say if you assign another user story, then it will become 26 plus 8, 34. That will be too much because the team velocity is 25. So we have to assign work. The total summation of the story points of the assigned work should be close to the team velocity. So 25 is the team velocity, and if you assign total work of 26 story points or 27 or 23 story points, they are fine. Don't go beyond 26 or 27. Okay. Also, if you assign lesser than 25, let's say 20 or 19, you are underutilizing the team capacity. So be close to the team velocity. All right. When you assign your work packages or user stories to the team members, the product owner will consider the team velocity and accordingly assign the iteration goals. Okay, so that's why I mentioned velocity indicates team capacity, how much work the team can do per iteration. With that, we are done with this discussion. I hope you liked this discussion. And if you're preparing for the PMP exam or PMI ACP exam, what you learn from this video about velocity is just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many things you need to learn to answer tricky questions you're going to see in the real exam. For example, what will happen to velocity if you have different sizes of iterations, 3 weeks and 2 weeks? How to calculate the velocity then? What will be the velocity of an iteration if it got cancelled? And can we consider partly done work for calculating the team velocity? How about using velocity to generate burnup and burndown charts, and how to infer the trend provided or seen in a burndown and a burnup chart? And there are so many things you need to know to clear the PMP exam or PMI ACP. So if you're interested to take PMP training, we offer excellent training for you to pass your PMP exam on your first attempt. The best part is the first 10 hours of the training is for free. They are demo classes. You can attend the demo classes, evaluate the quality of the training. If you like, you can continue with us by paying the training fee. I have provided the link to enroll in the bootcamp or PMP training bootcamp in the description, so please check it out. Also, please give a thumbs up, like this video, share this video, and subscribe to my channel, because we people, content creators, spend a lot of time in creating high quality videos like this. And if you really find this video useful and informative, you can like this video. Also subscribe to my channel. I regularly come up with a lot of learning materials related to project management and publish them in my YouTube channel. So subscribe to my channel to get more educational videos like this. I'll see you again with another interesting video. Till then, bye.